ago, and I think it's an important topic that affects us all. So I have a handout and some other information. I'm going to ask Mr. Mills to join me, please.
Only to turn the page.
I have a handout here for anyone who would like to see it. It's basically the entire handouts that we were given at that meeting. First, I'd like to acknowledge and thank Christine Myers for all of her effort in preparing an agenda, objectives, purpose, data, reports, and serving as the moderator of the meeting. I'd also like to thank Mayors Davis and Henry for having the ability to recognize that reasonable men often have differing opinions and that those differences do not alter our mutual respect. I appreciate their no-nonsense, candid, and honest approach to discussion. As you may recall, this governing body passed a resolution requesting that the West Morris Regional High School District conduct a referendum to consider changing the funding formula to a per-pupil basis. Chester Borough, Chester Township, and Mendham Borough all passed the same resolution. Washington Township, on the other hand, passed a resolution requesting that the Board of Trustees of the West Morris Regional High School District not consider such a referendum. The Board of Trustees of the West Morris Regional High School District tabled our request for a referendum, apparently acquiescing to the wishes of Washington Township. Subsequently, however, the Board of Trustees organized an education summit, which was held on June 14th and moderated by Dr. William Librera. The result of that education was we can no longer accept the status quo. Please flip the chart. After the education summit, Mayor Henry suggested we hold a meeting of the 5 mayors of the respective towns that comprise the West Morris Regional High School District. That meeting was held on June 30th. Highlights of that meeting are as follows. Our agenda, purpose and objective of the meeting, review of our concerns, facts, considerations, working session, next step. Please flip. The purpose of the meeting was to fully explore issues surrounding the regional high school and lower schools, quality, funding, shared services, reorganization, and perspectives of our constituents. The objective of this meeting: arrive at a mutually agreeable process to resolve all issues surrounding regional high school and lower schools. And I like to emphasize, arrive at a mutually agreeable process. Document this process and communicate it to our towns, which is what I believe I'm doing today. Agree to work together, resolve the issues regardless of the outcome. Now, the moderator had conducted a pre-meeting review with each of the 5 mayors. And basically there were 5 categories that we discussed. Mayor Henry, Mayor Bob Davis, Vice Mayor Jim Harmon, and Mayor Bill Codger all felt that quality of education was not a concern. I felt it was a concern. Mayors Henry, Davis, Vice Mayor Harmon, and Mayor Codger did not believe that value for the dollars was a concern. I thought it was a concern. Mayor Davis of Chester Borough was the only one who thought shared services was a concern. Vice Mayor Harmon of Washington Township thought consolidation was a primary concern. 4 other mayors did not believe that consolidation was a major concern. Deregionalize or withdraw. Mayor Henry, Mayor Davis, Vice Mayor Harmon, and Mayor Codger did not feel that was a concern. I did. Funding formula. All 5 mayors felt that that was a concern. However, please don't turn yet. There is one marked in red. When we got to this issue with Mayor Davis of Chester Borough, a new wrinkle came out, one I had never heard before. It appears that Mayor Codger has advised Mayor Davis that if there was any change in the funding formula for the high school, that Chester Township would impose a funding formula on Chester Borough for their K-8. I don't know whether he has the authority to do that and what their legal setup is, but I thought that that was a wrinkle, especially since both towns passed a resolution calling for funding formula, that was a caveat that I'd never heard before. I was a little floored. Now, I think this is the telling slide of the meeting. Basically, 4 mayors are saying that their only concern is the funding formula. And if you were at that meeting, you would have heard that Mayor Henry is concerned about the funding formula. Mayor Davis, as I said before, had that concern. I'm concerned about the funding formula. I believe Vice Mayor Harmon's concern from Mendham Township on the funding formula is that they like not to see any change. So that's his concern. And Mayor Codger again said that he would affect Chester Borough if we went to a funding formula change. You can flip the chart, please. Our moderator clearly emphasized to us that there have been multiple failed efforts over the last 3 decades to effect meaningful reform at our high school. How do we do this better this time? I want to emphasize this slide. It's very important. Multiple failed efforts over the last 3 decades. How do we do it better this time? Flip the chart, please. We then went into our next steps. Create a work plan. Document your decisions in one document. Communicate broadly, consistently, and thoroughly to all citizens, school boards, municipal websites, school websites, newspaper, U.S. mail, other. After approximately 2.5 hours of discussion, Mayor Codger proposed that we do another study. He was prepared to put up $10,000 to pay for the study, and he wanted the rest of us to do likewise. I disagreed with Mayor Codger for several reasons, including 1, past studies have not produced any action as witnessed by our history of 30 years of superfluous and expensive studies. This book is filled with our last 30 years worth of studies. As our moderator pointed out, there have been multiple failed efforts over the last 30 years. How do we do this better this time? Another study was not doing it better. It was doing the same thing over and over with the expectation of different results. 3, I had no authority to bind Mendham Township without discussing this with my fellow committee members and my constituents, you. 4, I felt this was a failure to meet the objectives of the meeting as outlined by our moderator. Mayor Codger wants us to once again conduct another study, only this time he has different expectations. And I'd like to refresh everyone's memory with some wisdom from Albert Einstein. According to Albert Einstein, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's what Mayor Codger wants. He thinks we're going to do a study and come up with different results. So basically, if the objective of the meeting was to arrive at a mutually agreeable process to resolve all issues surrounding the regional high school and lower schools, document this process and communicate it to your towns, and lastly, agree to work together to resolve these issues regardless of the outcome, was now circumvented. Further, I found it incomprehensible that no one could answer any of the following questions. What will the study cost? Who's going to pay for the study? We have already asked the state to do a study and pay for it. Aren't we shooting ourselves in the foot by stating the towns will pay if the state doesn't? What are we going to study? Who's going to do the study? What if one or more towns decide it will not pay for a study? Then what? What is this study going to tell us that we don't already know? At this point in the meeting, I was convinced that my objections were falling on deaf ears. 4 mayors were acting in haste and not moving towards real opportunities for meaningful reform for our concerned and unjustly taxed citizens. The meeting ended around 10 p.m. The mayors instructed the moderator to put down on paper what transpired. As Mayor Codger has alleged, I walked out of the meeting. I walked out with him, Mayor Davis, Vice Mayor Harmon, Mayor Henry, and our moderator at the conclusion of the meeting. and I trust that answers the question of whether I walked out of the meeting. The next day, July 1st, I received a copy of a letter written by the moderator and addressed to the citizens of the respective towns. I disagreed with its contents, as it stated that I agreed to conduct the study, which I did not, and I had no legal authority from the Township Committee to sign. I had a lot of issues, legal, moral, ethical, with the letter, so I respectfully asked the moderator not to put my name on it. I wrote a draft of a letter that I was willing to sign, and I sent it to the moderator. Ultimately, a press release was issued by the other 4 mayors and sent to the press on June 11th, without my approval, my knowledge, or my consent. Copies of all these letters are available, along with the rest of the results, in this package for you to review if anyone would like to see it. In my humble opinion, I believe some of the participants were not seeking a mutually agreeable process, but rather an opportunity to continue the status quo, keep some of our outspoken citizens at bay. I'm no match for the siren.